Today's Mercedes-Benz interview of the day brought to you by Mercedes-Benz EV. Owning a Mercedes-Benz EV isn't just extraordinary, it's extra easy. Vehicles all electric, feeling all Mercedes, choice all yours. Learn more. MBUSA.com/EQ. He's the popular analyst on the mothership. He's Dan Orlovsky, former NFL quarterback. And you can see him Monday through Friday on NFL Live. They start at 4 Eastern. Help me understand the allure of the New York Giants on Hard Knocks off-season.
Well, I think, it's their 100-year anniversary, so I'm sure that's got a relative attachment to the NFL. The history of the organization, so that's the treetop. I think the initial, just as the everyday fan, how serious were they about drafting a quarterback at number 6? Well, we're going to find out how real that was, and maybe some of their internal feelings about Daniel Jones instead of what necessarily gets shared out in public through the media. How much they loved Malik Neighbors in comparison to the Rome Odunze conversation, because I had heard sometimes maybe they were going to take Rome Odunze because Malik Neighbors, LSU, OBJ. So I think that a little bit more of why Wink Martindale isn't there, maybe that relationship, because that defense really started to become a difference maker at the end of last year, and new defensive coordinator instead of Wink Martindale. So maybe a little bit of that. And Brian Daboll went from, oh my gosh, coach of the year, this guy's completely changed the culture, to now, hey, if he doesn't win, we're going to fire him, which I always find crazy. And then probably how serious were they into keeping Saquon Barkley? And was there any regret from the year before of not paying Saquon and instead of paying Daniel Jones type of thing?
Give me the team or teams that your opinion changed after the schedule was released.
Okay, so I think Miami's final 6 games. And I felt like Miami would be a team that would be very different back in November, December than they would at the start of the season, just because of the injuries that they sustained last year. Jalen Phillips would be coming back. Bradley Chubb would be coming back more than likely. And so I thought hey, if they could get, hang around early on and then somewhat of a favorable schedule on the back end, at least hypothetically, they got a chance to continue to be into that playoff conversation. Their final 6 games are absolutely brutal. I think 5 of the 6 games will be more than likely playoff teams. And I'm pretty sure 3 of those 6 games are on the road in cold weather. I think they go to Green Bay Thanksgiving, the second to the last or third last week of the season. They go on the road to Cleveland and then on the road to the New York Jets. And so I felt really good about Miami, because I honestly believe they could weather the storm. They still might, but those final 6 games are absolutely brutal. I think Houston's schedule is favorable, just because it doesn't feel like there's that, when you're finding, for me, Dan, I'm always looking at these schedules to sit there and go, okay, is there a stretch where you feel if they're playing well, they can get hot? Is there a 3, 4, 5 game stretch where you go win every one of them type thing? And I don't think that there's a overwhelming 3 or 4 game stretch in Houston's schedule where you sit there and go, whew, that is just, you could be staring 0-4 in the face type of thing. So I felt really good about Houston, in general, but seeing their schedule, and the same with Seattle, I think Seattle's schedule lends itself to have a lot of success for a football team that is a little bit unknown.
I've been talking about the Steelers with that stretch where they have 8 games, 6 are going to be in the division, and then they pop out to play the Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Is that the back end of their schedule too? Yes. That one, when we were doing the reveal last night, Nagandi, Kevin, we went through the schedule, looked at it a little bit, and then he was like, wait, guys, and we had to bring it back up. That final 7 or 8 game stretch is absolutely brutal. You could sit there and go, they could lose all 7, just because of how good that schedule stretch is.
Well, they're going to be playing 8 games, 6 are in division, and then they play the Eagles and the Chiefs. So they could conceivably lose all of those games. And that's why their over-under is 8.5 wins this year, even with an upgrade at quarterback with Russ.
Yeah. That was something that jumped out last night, was because the division is going to be – now, a big part of this whole conversation when it comes to the AFC North, them and I would think the NFC North are the two best divisions, the two deepest divisions within the NFL. And Cleveland has as talented a roster, maybe in the NFL, but certainly in that division. We have no idea if Deshaun Watson can play at a high level week in and week out anymore. We just don't. So as much as we love, and I think if Jameis had to go play, Jameis could play good football, but that's not as daunting of a, hey, you got to play them late again in the year if Deshaun's not playing at a high level.
Yeah, but why don't we know that what to expect out of Deshaun Watson now?
I think the last time we saw him play at a high level consistently was 2020, because he sat out 21. He didn't play a ton in 22, right? Because of the suspension and then the injury last year. Now that second half against Baltimore, when that injury happened, there was shades of it. There were signs of him looking like vintage Deshaun Watson did for that 3 or 4 year stretch in Houston. But I mean, Dan, we're going to go on almost 4 years, or at least 3 years of him playing high-end football consistently over the course of a couple months. So that's why we just don't know. And I love Joe Burrow. I've been a fan of Joe Burrow since I saw him be the baddest person on the planet in the national title game. He's got to stay healthy. And there's a little bit of that question mark attached to Joe now as well.
Talking to Dan Orlovsky of the Mothership NFL Live Monday through Friday. If you want to stay tuned in with the NFL, it's must-see TV. That's at 4 Eastern every day, Monday through Friday. I'm looking at the Chiefs, and I wondered, now I also checked Taylor Swift concert schedule, and she was going to be in Canada. And a listener even asked, did I think that the NFL would maybe try to orchestrate a game where the Chiefs would be close by so you have Taylor Swift? And I said, well, check when she's in Toronto and check when the Chiefs are in Buffalo.
Come on.
Same week. 4 o'clock game. Do you think that the NFL did that?
I don't think that's coincidence. One thing I have learned, and you have been around this league and the way it covers and it brings it to the fans longer than us. They are as smart as they can possibly be. And that is not coincidence. I also don't think there is anything wrong with it. I think it's highly intelligent. I think what she has brought to the NFL is nothing but positive. And I do not believe that to be a coincidence. I think that's unbelievable by you as well. Did you say that before the schedule release?
I said check to see when the Chiefs play Buffalo and where she is in Canada. And then it turned out it's the same week. And I go, okay, that's not a coincidence.
Not at all.
Not a coincidence. Okay, we have a bet. I have a bet with Fritzy, wedding cake to the face, that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce will get engaged this season.
I'm taking whatever I can on the yes.
Okay, so you're with me. Todd said no because he doesn't love love. You and I love love.
He's a pessimist?
Yes.
Yeah. No hopeless romantic for him. He's not a rom-com type of guy?
No, he's not.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I cried when I watched like the new I'm a movie crier. So even like some of the new movies that have been remade that I know the endings, I'm going to cry at them. So I'm wired emotionally anyway. But I'm saying yes on that.
You ever cry during a football game when you were playing?
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. I mean,
during the game.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've cried. I mean, the first time I'll give you some cry football stories, DP. First time I ever played football, I was playing quarterback. I was 9 years old. I went drop back to pass on my first pass of practice. I got slapped in the arm like this. I cried like a baby. I ran to the parking lot and I wanted to never play football again. Thank God that my father didn't allow me to. Definitely cried during college football game, just in some pain moments. I cried against the Vikings, not for running out of the end zone, but for a hit that I took in a game that made me like tear up. I cried definitely pregame right after Sandy Hook, not to get morbid in a laughing manner, but yeah, I've definitely cried in multiple. I'm a crier though, dude. Like My daughter made a soccer team last night, and when she told me the news, I cried. So I cry.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I
Yeah.
mean, like my kids will be, we went to see Book of Mormon on Broadway. It's a comedy. I cried. At intermission, I'm crying. My kids go, "What are you crying about?" I go, "I have
Yeah.
no idea." But I
You
just,
know what gets me every time? I'm sure you have gone down to Disney World and seen the lights and fireworks show on Magic Kingdom. When they do that, no
I
matter
cried. I cried
every
too.
time,
Yep, I cried.
every time.
Yep, I did.
Yeah.
My kids were little, and I'm thinking, I never got this experience.
Yeah.
My parents drove us to Disneyland. We didn't go into Disneyland.
We
That was
drove
our
by it.
that was our vacation. I got my
Yeah.
kids out there, and they got all the fireworks and all the Goofy and Pluto and Donald Duck, and I'm going, oh my God, how
Yeah.
lucky are these kids? Yeah.
It gets me every time.
All right. Is there any reason to doubt the Chiefs?
Oh, of course. I think number one, just coming off of last night, the start of their season obviously is very difficult, and the finish of their season is very difficult. Their first two games are going to be big deals, obviously Baltimore, Cincinnati. And I don't exactly remember what their final four games are off the top of my head from last night, but their final four games are challenging. We have no idea what's going to happen with Rashee Rice. And when I said this last night, I said, well, we don't know, how long, and Shefty cut me off and he's like, expect Rashee Rice to not be there for part of the season. So it's like, okay, Shefty's saying that. So, you don't know how long Rashee Rice isn't going to be there. And Rashee Rice became a really big deal for them last year. He was their 1B, not their number 2, their 1B. He would be part of blocking and to get out in some of their pass routes. I understand it's Patrick. I understand it's Andy Reid. But he was a really big part of what they really became, a possession guy for them. That's not who Xavier Worthy is. That's not who Hollywood Brown is. And so to not have that is certainly there. That gives pause. And we don't know who's going to be playing left tackle. So that certainly allows pause. L'Jarius Sneed's the best man-to-man cover corner in the NFL, certainly in the conversation. Not there anymore. So I'm not sitting here saying they're not going to get in or they're not the Super Bowl favorites. Absolutely. But there is reason and realistic and real pause to say, well, let's see what they look like or how long he's out or how great that defense is without that lockdown cover corner.
Well, the Chiefs, their last game is at Denver, so they may catch a break at the end of the season. And you know what? Speaking of the Broncos, like Sean Payton's got a hit on this quarterback here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really important. I don't know what you think of Bo Nix, but I mean, their over-under is 5.5 wins this year. Like he's got one more year, it feels like, before all of a sudden it gets a little bit warmer there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would start Bo Nix week 1, and that's a daunting thing because Denver's on the road in Seattle. And then week 3, they play Tampa Bay, and then week 4, they play the New York Jets. So if this was any other rookie quarterback, if we were talking about maybe even like a player like a Drake May, who while he's played a ton of college snaps, he's got he's got game that he needs to work on. The reason why I say play in week number 1, even though it's Mike McDonald, new head coach, and all these crazy blitzes, Bo Nix, 1, has 61 career starts. He has played and seen a ton of college football. Number 2, he's got thick skin now. He went highly touted, Auburn. Oh, you can't play, you stink, leave the SEC, you can't play anymore, goes. So like the weathering, the dealing with failure, because I do think it's going to be a bumpy first month because of those teams, because you're playing Seattle, crazy blitzes, Tampa Bay, crazy blitzes, and the Jets, obviously suffocating. But I think Sean Payton's got to start him if he even looks remotely close to being capable of operating their offense. And that first month has got to be this weather the storm, learning experience, be tough skin, and hopefully he starts to play his best football as they get into October.
What do you expect out of the Chargers first year?
Yeah, I have the expectation that they'll absolutely play meaningful football games in December. I think Harbaugh is too good of a coach. I think their offensive line is going to play too much in control of football games, just stylistically. I think their tight ends will be a much bigger part of their football team pass game wise than people believe. I love the addition of Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnson's got to take a step forward. I think the defense will play a little bit more consistent than it did against Brandon Staley. So I'm not giving them the division, and I'm not giving them a playoff spot, but I am saying they'll be playing meaningful football games in December.
And I love what Harbaugh is doing, and I've been saying this for years, that somebody's going to have a different approach and not going to be throwing the ball 40 times. That he wanted to have an offensive line just like he did at San Diego, Stanford, San Francisco, Michigan, and that's what he's going to do. He could have taken a wide receiver, could have taken a tight end, and all along I kept thinking he's just going to build that offensive line again.
Yep, and I'll always go back to the quote he shared this offseason that, and it's what I've believed for a long time and tried to articulate. He just did it better when he said, every position is dependent upon the offensive line. The offensive line is dependent on no one. And that, I've always said, like, if you got a great offensive line, the skill players are better than they actually are. And the same with the quarterback. But if you have a great quarterback, it doesn't, the offensive line being poor negatively affects him. So I kind of had that same thought, the way he was going to kind of build that football team. And I just think that it's cyclical. For 2 years, I have felt that the offensive line was going to, or the NFL, for 2 years, the NFL was going to trend towards going back to early 2000s football. And that was going to be a little bit more focus on shrinking down formations. Let's pound the football. Bigger linebackers going to be needed. Run stopping defensive tackles. We got to control the line of scrimmage. And it feels like, 35% of the league is at that point right now.
Anybody have more pressure on them this year than Dak Prescott?
Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. That was a really big deal last year. We've just not talked about it this much this year. But I think everybody within the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers, for sure. It's because the expectations are the same as last year. Like, you got to go win a Super Bowl. This is the best roster that Rodgers has been on in a decade when it comes to real talent. And so, Dan, I would have thought yes about Dak Prescott. And then Marcus yesterday, we were on this, the schedule release show, and Mark was like, Dak ain't got no pressure on him. And I pushed back, and I was like, you're out of your mind. He's like, Kirk Cousins just got 100 guaranteed and $160 million contract. If Dak hit the open market right now, he's going to get 200. And I don't disagree with them. Jared Goff just got $170. Now, Jared Goff's going to the Super Bowl and AFC title game, but he just got $170. And because of who Dak is and, the consistent performance that he does bring more often than not. Yeah, I while there's like the pressure to, okay, last year your contract, Dak Prescott is going to get $1 gajillion next offseason, either from the Cowboys or someone else.
Great stuff as always. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, boss.
That's Dan Orlovsky, ESPN analyst, part of NFL Live, and you can watch him Monday through Friday at 4 Eastern.